My name is Jen Sienna, and I am the 7th and 8th grade science teacher here at Nicolay Middle School in Cambridge, and I'm making this video today to explain some of the successes that we've had implementing one-to-one science Chromebooks just within my classroom. We have a Chromebook cart of 30 Chromebooks, and what that was like for us this first year, and then also some of the lessons that I learned along the way as the first person within the school to actually have a dedicated set of Chromebooks for my room. So let's go with the successes. One of the first things that I love about having Chromebooks in my classroom is that it allows students to be self-paced. Science is a very conceptual field. I'm not having them just memorize things. They have to construct meaning based on data, based on evidence. And a lot of the science that we do in middle school directly conflicts with what students have experienced throughout their life. So that takes time, and not all students are going to be able to arrive at the scientific understanding that I'm aiming for with them at the same time. Therefore, having students be able to have flexibility in the speed at which they go through the curriculum is critical to me. Having Chromebooks in my classroom allows them to do that for a couple of reasons. Number one, I put all of my lessons on Google Drive. All of my activities are right on Google Drive so that students, if they forget a sheet, they lose a sheet, they can access it at home. Secondly, I keep a Google Calendar, so students know exactly what's going on each day of the week. Now, that allows them to do a little bit of forward thinking that we don't usually push middle schoolers to do. Usually we have like the hand-holding of, okay, this is what we're doing today, and then tomorrow you're going to do this, next day this, and so on. What I do with my kids now is that because everything's on the Google Calendar, they can actually look out into the future. I try to be at least a week, maybe 2 weeks ahead of them, so if we're doing a project and they come in on Monday, they see that due date already in there on Thursday. They can look at like what checkpoints do I have for them along the way. I can show them, okay, these are the things that you need to accomplish this week. You don't have to do it exactly on Monday or exactly on Tuesday, but you do have to get it done by this date, and it lets them have a little bit more flexibility when we're working within the classroom. Secondly, students who are absent, they don't have to ask me anything anymore. As soon as they come in, they know that they're going to sign out their Chromebook and that they need to look on Google Drive or on the Google Calendar to know, oh, this is what I missed, this is what I need to do before I come back, so that they're prepared to continue on the next day. The last piece has been the biggest thing that I've struggled with thus far in teaching, and it's that parent communication piece. How do parents know what I'm doing in the classroom? Now parents can go on my website, they can see what activities are we doing for a particular unit. They can see when are things due, are there any projects coming up, what's the next assessment going to be, what can I expect in the future for my student. Now, along with all of the successes, like being able to differentiate to students much more easily through letting them kind of pace themselves, that's actually one other thing. I can actually put additional resources both for students who are struggling with material and students who are excelling. They don't have to wait to be able to grab 5 minutes of my time for me to explain a new concept and say, okay, so we already did genetics, we did Punnett squares, we did pedigrees, I'm going to give you incomplete dominance in genetics, and you haven't really had this yet, but here I'm going to explain it really fast, now go. That isn't my extension anymore. When a student feels like they're ready, like they've mastered the content, it's just a click away to get to the next challenge. Same thing for kids who are struggling. They don't need me to come over and say, okay, let's explain this again. I can post 4 or 5 different resources for them to look at, and they can choose which explanation they like best. I'm not always going to be the one who's the best at explaining a concept. Maybe I'm really confusing to that student. So by being able to look at what have other teachers done to explain it, how has this person done it, how's this person done it, it can actually help my students because they get a variety of explanations. And then it's not just me. It opens up their learning to be able to learn with many, many more teachers than are available in our small school. So, now, back to lessons learned. Two main things that come up to mind. Number one, you can never start preparing to go one-to-one too early. There's nothing wrong with making something in advance that you don't necessarily use right away. Maybe you can trial something if you make a Nearpod lesson. Maybe you only have kids do it in teams, and those that have like an iPad or a device of some sort, they're the ones who actually run the Nearpod or run the Kahoot, but they can work in teams around that one device. So personally, I wish that I would have started putting things up earlier. I wish I would have gotten my website polished a little bit sooner so that I was only adding resources, not trying to create it from scratch. The second thing that happens when you go to having Chromebooks in your classroom all the time is that you have a whole new set of behaviors that you have to deal with. So students are used to having technology that's used for fun. So when you bring Chromebooks into the classroom, what do they expect them to be used for? Fun. And that's not necessarily the case. So I would have kids that, that first week that we had Chromebooks, I would be up there trying to explain the directions for lab, and they're off listening to YouTube videos or playing weird sounds in the background or going to this website or going to that website. And I'm sitting there going guys, just listen. And so I had to really restructure teaching expectations for my classroom, because now we have these tools that are amazing and they're super helpful and you love using them, but real quick they can become the bane of your existence if kids aren't willing to work with you as far as behaviors. So some of the things that I did to kind of blend that line is that, number one, work comes first. If you're not done with your work, that's what you're working on, and you can't be off doing anything else. Number two, there's got to be a little bit of fun. It's middle school. I try to go through and find at least 2 resources for games that complement. I try to find something that's interesting and that can then be the I'm done, oh, go play this angelfish breeding game because we're learning about genetics. Go find this rock cycle simulation because we're learning about rocks. Or go find this mining game because we're learning about mining. So they can then get that need to play and take a break mentally, but they're still doing it in the science context. So it requires a little bit more ingenuity on the part of the teacher, but it's not as bad as just, okay, well, you're using it incorrectly, I guess you have to go put it away. Because that's not really teaching kids how to manage themselves. It's not teaching them to use the tool productively. It's just taking the tool away. And that's not what you want to do. So those are my 2 big struggles, was just getting everything there and getting it online, and then setting up that process, how do I want kids to access the content? How do I want them to see it arranged? Which tools am I going to use? Am I going to use Google Classroom, or am I just going to use a Google Calendar? Am I going to use Edmodo? Am I going to use this? Am I going to use that? And just really figuring out which tools I wanted to use in my classroom to organize, and also making sure that I increase the expectation behaviorally for students so that they can personally handle the responsibility that comes with having a device.